Hi. Good event. This thing worth doing? Good deal. All right. That's the end. That's all I have. I like hearing that we do something good. I don't actually have any prepared statement. It's just very rare that I get a chance to see a group of club directors, and frankly, I just wanted to make myself available to you. And if you're not interested, I understand that, and I'm happy to turn around and head back to Colorado Springs. Now, I'd like to watch part of the tryout that I think starts 30 minutes or 40 minutes, something like that. Seriously, we really like this kind of an event because I think we don't collectively as USA Volleyball get nearly as much of an opportunity to interact with club directors that are probably the prime constituent of our role as a national sport association. So anything I can answer about USA Volleyball, I generally like to start with, don't you have something you want to complain about? There must be lots of them.
No, my question was just that, do you have the same type of meeting for your districts, you know, like NCBA or Colorado or SoCal? Do you have the same type of forum with them to kind of find out different things and stuff?
I think I know what you're getting at. And the answer is not as much as we should, I think. You're talking about the governance structure of USA Volleyball, so perhaps you know that, or many of you know that we're structured within 40 regions around the United States. Each of the regions is an independent incorporated entity that's required to be a 501c3, which gives them quite broad autonomy within certain guidelines. It's a terrible word, I shouldn't really use this, but I will. It's not like franchising, but there's something like that. So for a region to be a formal region of USA Volleyball, they have to meet certain criteria. Frankly, they're fairly broad, and the regions, I think, are like clubs or players or coaches. There are some spectacularly good ones, and there are some less spectacularly good ones. How's that for political correctness in this political season? You know, it's not unlike lots of national organizations. I think that's a fairly common way to operate. The regions have an assembly of their own, so the leadership of each region represents that region at the regional assembly, which meets formally twice a year. Lots of USA Volleyball staff are at those meetings and interact with the region assembly. Within each region, tell me how boring this gets if you all heard this. They're required to be governed democratically. Anybody have a great definition of democratic government, particularly in this political season? It's an interesting topic. Wide range of what democratically governed means. But they ought to have a board of directors. The board of directors ought to be fairly transparent in terms of how people are elected or selected to that board, how often it meets, how large it is, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And does the board vote on the commissioner or the president or the chairperson or whatever they happen to call that leader position? So that's sort of the framework. We have 4 governing assemblies within USA Volleyball. The region assembly made up of the commissioners of the region, junior assembly, which is made up theoretically of junior club representatives, but nominated by the regions. We have an officials assembly made up of officials, referees, scorekeepers, etc., both beach indoor and sitting. And the fourth is a beach assembly because it's a unique enough discipline, I think, that it ought to be meeting within its own population. So those four are sort of that subset of governance within USA Volleyball below the board of directors of USA Volleyball, et cetera. So, sure, sorry.
A couple of weeks ago, you made some comments at the HP clinic about possible changes in the game, possible rule changes. It might be interesting to hear some of that and possibly hear what some of the people at the club level think about some of those changes.
Okay. Just one man's opinion, right? Remember, not, yeah. Okay. Well, first, of course, there won't be any changes between now and the Olympic Games. The International Federation tends to make rule changes at the beginning of a quadrennial, which is reasonable and normal, I think, so that the teams around the world have an opportunity to fully become familiar with a new style of play. I think there are, I'm not going to stand up here for an hour, I hope. There are two sort of overriding themes that are influencing rule changes. One is the time of a match, and there's a lot of pressure, I guess, to try to keep a match within a 2-hour time window, and the rationale or logic is that that fits within a television broadcast window and is somewhat controllable and predictable, et cetera. It makes it easier to get on television. I'm sort of neutral on that personally to negative. I don't buy that very much, but it's a pretty common theme right now. So lots of discussions are surrounding how to package the game within that 2-hour window. And the other one is a rally, keep the ball flying. If you go to the FIVB website, you'll see that as a sort of a motto or a goal, a philosophy. It's on their website and most of their material. So how keep the ball flying, at least for me, implies longer rallies. So we got longer rallies, but we got this 2-hour window. We have a sort of a conflict going on here that I think is interesting. And I think one of the things I said was the FIVB, in my view, sort of goes after things or goes about things in a kind of a bass-ackwards way, to regurgitate a common phrase here. I'd rather be thinking, what is the game? What do we think the game should look like? What would be really nice if we could make the game perfect? Can't make the game perfect. So I like, okay, a long rally, but I don't want it to go forever. I'd like to see it be a little bit harder to kill the ball because I think the nature of the sport, or one of the fundamental natures of the sport, is to organize counterattack. I want to dig the ball and I want to be creative about how I counterattack against the other team. And then, of course, I'm on the other side. I want to do the same thing. I want it to be hard to kill the ball. So some of the things that I think are interesting to look at would be eliminating open hand tipping. I think it's too easy to kill the ball, so I'd like to see that out of the game. If you get a bad set, you're in the front row or you're a quick hitter or something, and I don't know, I just don't think that's a very attractive play. I'd like to see something that I would call free blocking, free as in no cost, free blocking, which for me is I get to block anything that I can touch. I don't have to let the attacking team finish the attack. If I can reach the ball and the setter is going to set it, too bad. I get to block that. And I think what will probably happen, I can't guarantee it because we don't really know, but I think you'll start passing the ball off the net a little bit, and it'll be a little harder to get the ball to the quick hitter, and you'll have a little bit tougher time killing the ball. One of the things I didn't talk about is I'd like to see a slight modification to the ball itself. Thicker skin, less air pressure, maybe slightly larger. I don't think you have to do much to slow the ball down quite dramatically. The Japanese Volleyball Association has done a lot of research on this. It takes very little adjustment to slow the speed of the ball down quite a lot. The ball's not moving as fast. We get to dig more balls. We get more counterattack, etc. What else? I'd like to see if we can play around with getting a two-point play that's really challenging, I think, in the sport, but not impossible. Some leagues in Europe have done that in the past with varying degrees of success. What other ones did I talk about? Those are some of the ones. Oh, I'd like to see some change in the substitution rules. I'd like to see maybe stay with 6 internationally, but free substitutions, so that John starts, I go in for John, he can only come back in for me. I'm not sure that that's a limit that I think is interesting for the game. You know, John comes in for me, I go in for you, you go, you know, something like that. I think we've restricted coaching at least in the international world into a very narrow sort of confined walls, and that's not interesting. One of the interesting things about sport is the variety of how teams play. I think that's part of why collegiate basketball, collegiate football in this country is so popular. Teams are really different. So I'd like to see more of that. And if we really have to get into a 2-hour window, it cannot be done with 3 out of 5. It maybe could be done with 2 out of 3, maybe. But it cannot be done with 3 out of 5. So we're just wasting our time dealing with. But I mean, you can get a match under 2 hours, but you're going to have to deal with the match that's also under 1 hour. And all the broadcast people I've ever talked to, that's just as big of a problem for them scheduling as the match that goes 2 hours and 15 minutes or 2 hours and 30 minutes. So anyway, close? Okay.
So related to that, why couldn't it just be solved with a 2 out of 3 to, in our world, around 25 points that keeps us on the hour, but for the higher level to 50 points or some just higher numbers so that they had a 2-hour show?
No, it could.
Because it is the 2 out of 3 that is pretty accurate on time, and 3 out of 5 is horrible.
Yeah, 2 out of 3.
I think 61%, right? Of the
yeah.
61% of the matches internationally end 3-0, which means they've got all this huge time left over.
Yeah. I think, as I said, 3 out of 5 is essentially impossible. 2 out of 3, if you put the number of points higher and make the third, the deciding set much shorter, maybe 7 points or something like that, you get really close. Yeah. So I agree with that. So if you really want to see, I think I mentioned this at the HP clinic, the indoor volleyball in Rio, they're in real trouble, really, really in trouble, for men particularly, because of a couple things. They're going to try to get 6 matches a day in, and in 3 sessions, which means they have to clear the arena twice and get people back in twice. In Brazil, it's going to be a challenge, just organizing it. And the number of teams on the men's side, indoor, I'm talking indoor now, it's really a competitive tournament. Probably 7, 8, maybe even 9 of the 12 teams are going to be medal potential teams. So the matches are much more likely to be 5-set matches, longer matches. Then you have the coach challenge, which is relatively new. Longer rallies, even in the men's game, not as long as the women, but getting closer. It'll be, if the match is supposed to be, if the U.S. is supposed to play at, I don't know, whatever, 8 o'clock, if you tune in at 8:30 or 9, you'll probably catch the start of the match. I think it'll be okay. They're gonna struggle with that. I think it's going to be a challenge. So, yeah, you're right.
So, Doug, from a bottom-up standpoint, how can club directors contribute to the mission of USA? I strongly believe that there is a bottom-up approach of expertise, knowledge, and consensus that can make a contribution. And I have seen a lot of gaps in between our volleyball, gaps between middle school to high school to club, club to college, college to USA, and so forth. So I think this event, it's amazing. And from your standpoint, how can club directors have a voice and contribute?
Well, first of all, I think the club system in this country, the high school system in this country, and the college system in this country is significantly responsible for the success of the sport that exists already. So all of you are doing a fabulous job. You know, basically we have this internalized competitive environment in the United States. You want your club to be the best, you want your team to be the best, and you're going to be as competitive as you can be, most of us, with the other clubs in your city or your state or your region or whatever it is, or at high school within your league, et cetera, et cetera. So I really like that system. I think it's wonderful. So I buy into that very much. What we try to do, or what I think our role is to put some parameters into the system. Expertise parameters, protection parameters, facility standards, things that elevate the quality, the expertise, the safety, the protections that we think are important and that we hope you as club directors or you as coaches or you as parents care about. And we're never going to be perfect at this, and it's going to be I think, an ever-evolving environment. So, you know, we have a coaching accreditation program, not coach training, coaching accreditation. Big difference, I think. We want to be able to say that you have been exposed to, at some level, the latest information that we can find or that we're aware of, and that you have been accredited or certified, and we're the only entity that's doing that. And I think it's extraordinarily important. And again, if I were, you know, the god of the sport or had unlimited authority, I'd elevate the standards. So if you want to participate in USA Volleyball sanctioned events, you need to be certified, accredited as a coach at some increasing level. I think recertification is important. I think I don't know, demonstrating that is important. I think demonstrating that you are actively engaged in coaching is important. So I think that's what we need to be about. Standards that we implement in cooperation with our regions, the clubs, the coaches, the populations that are constituent populations of USA Volleyball. And then I think we have to put the umbrella over opportunities to participate and have an ever-increasing structure so that kids can pursue their dreams, whether they're Olympic, collegiate, whatever they happen to be. You know, again, if I had my way, I'd like every kid to think they have an opportunity to be an Olympian. I think it's fantastic. And we all know you're not going to be an Olympian. A couple are going to get there, but I get to strive. I get to involve myself with people that are better than me. I get to see that level. I get to push myself. I get to discover how much I care about this sport, and you know, all the benefits, the social benefits, the health benefits, the cooperation benefits, the whatever, the socialization benefits, all of those. So I think it's great. The fact that we get more kids every year that go to our high performance tryouts is wonderfully rewarding to me. And so I think that's a big part of what USA Volleyball has to be about. I don't know, so we should be able to, provide opportunities for coaches, for club directors, for regions, for the kids, for their parents. We're in an environment right now where safe sport and protections and just being sensitive to the environment that the kids are in is a huge issue, and it needs to be a huge issue. And we can pursue excellence and be hyper competitive in a safe, nurturing environment. I think we're doing a pretty good job of that, and it's never going to be where we want it to be, but we're moving in that direction, I think. So, yep. Sure. Nope, sorry. Here. Yeah.
Hi. I know Tom with USA Swimming and Ken with USA Hockey mentioned that they have coaches that travel to clubs to help them run practices and so on. Do you think that volleyball will ever get to that point where we could have, I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. Jordan Larson would be nice to stop in town once in a while.
We can make that happen, maybe. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know whether we're going to get that. I haven't really thought that one through that way. I think one of the advantages of where USA Volleyball happens to be located in Colorado Springs is that there are about 23, 24 other national governing bodies also located there, because the U.S. Olympic Committee headquarters is there, and there's an Olympic Training Center, et cetera. And so we get a lot of opportunity. John, I think, takes great advantage of it, and a lot of our other staff, to interact with the other sports. How are you doing things? So just like you're all getting together and hearing about other club practices, we get to hear about other national governing body practices. And there's, again, great differences, but a bunch of them are pretty similar to USA Volleyball, structured in many similar ways. So I think that's great. And kind of I don't know what I would call it, a regional or traveling coaching expertise group would be really interesting. So, I get to go to the high performance coaching clinic that we put on each year. Sometimes I get to be there longer than others. Coaching expertise in the United States in volleyball is really off the charts at a high level. We have a lot of just exceptional coaches. And one of our challenges, I wish I had more time to accomplish this, but we need to do a better job within USA Volleyball of creating kind of a seamless process from our national teams to our high performance program to our coaching accreditation program. So the information that is being developed or presented at the coaching accreditation program, whether it's at the impact level or it's CAP 3 or whatever it is, ought to be consistent with how we're training our high performance teams, youth, junior, et cetera, and what's happening in our senior national team, Olympic team gyms, beach, indoor, sitting, across the board. And it's not quite there yet. It's not where we'd like it to be, honestly, but we're aware of it, and we're trying to figure this out. Some of it's just time and location, and different people do things different ways. And we had a meeting the other day talking about our impact program, and I hope we're smart enough to look at it all the time. I really like the quote. You said, as soon as you achieve something, you got to go beyond that. So as soon as we think we're pretty good, yeah, we ought to start thinking about how we could be a whole lot better. But, you put an agenda together for whether it's CAP 1, 2, or 3, or you put an agenda together for impact. If John presents exactly the same topic that I present, you're surely not going to hear the same information, or you're going to hear it in a different way. That's really good. I like that, frankly. And so part of this, I don't really want to say that there's a disconnect. I think there's just some gaps, is simply that, John will talk about motor learning, and he'll emphasize different things than I'll say about motor learning, or, how, offensive, whatever it is, doesn't really matter. And I think that's a great plus. And I probably had more of an opportunity to do coaching seminars, whatever, outside the United States and inside. But I really love the time I get to engage with other coaches. I think all of you probably experience some of that too when you go to a coaching seminar or coaching clinic or whatever it is. You know, paying attention to the presentations is great. Going to lunch or dinner and talking to the coaches and sitting down at the table is even much better, I think. So that's just a great tool. We have fantastic expertise in this country at a really high level. And again, I say this a lot. Only the US and Brazil is really good all across the board, all disciplines of the sport, all age groups, both genders. You know, we're in a category by ourselves, and we just excuse me, we just need a pro league. That's all we need. As soon as we have that, we're going to leave Brazil behind. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. No. Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
I guess one of my questions, which kind of followed up earlier, was about the different regions. I guess more of a comment. I'm from the Northern California region.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that they have tons of volleyball clubs that they got to manage and things of that nature. But I just feel like there's kind of a disconnect with USA Volleyball as far as our organization is concerned, because I don't know personally if they follow some of the same steps. I guess maybe I'm asking for a little more policing of the regions so that, you know, like the Safe Sport program, you know,
Sure.
I can go to a club and maybe that program, coaches haven't been through that particular program, you know, maybe they've done some other kind of background check or ethics or something like that. But I think that that's what's creating a big disconnect, at least in our region, with qualified coaching. Do the coaches have a cap on, or just starting with the basics, you know,
Yeah.
the safe sport, you know, because I've been to clubs where, you know, I didn't even know, you know, they had the fantastic website, they got a brand new facility, you know, but I don't know this coach from a can of paint, you know, I don't know the background, you know, it just so happens the coach was in a rock band and coached, you know, junior high school, you know, but here we are
Right.
at the club level, and, you know, some people are just in this to, you know, a certain percentage of just want the kids babysitted. There's other percentage that really trying to develop their kids through good coaching and things of that nature. I just think we need to kind of police the regions a little bit better just to make sure that they.
How many of you are in it for the kids? How many of you are not in it for the kids? Anybody ever raise their hand on that one? Okay, so, I don't
But
know.
just more policing.
I hear you very, very clearly. In fact, I hear it almost every day. So the challenge is, and not just for us, and not just for the region, and not just for the club, the challenge is to validate compliance. It's really hard, which doesn't excuse the situation you're describing, but makes it complicated, especially in this electronic world where we do most of the things like that online and with computer programs, online registration, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if there's a perfect answer to that. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to review the criteria for regions to be in compliance and make a little bit of a shift away from just basic business practices to adding some programmatic levels of compliance. What kind of events do you run? How many? How widely are they distributed in your region? Are you doing things beyond simply girls junior programming? Are you interested in beach, grass, boys, adults, sitting, etc.? We can't necessarily make you do all of those, but it would be nice if you would continually expand your offerings. I don't know, so things like that. But it's challenging. I don't want to whine and tell you it's hard, but it's challenging. And we're a big country, and we've got a lot of kids playing volleyball. You know, we're going to probably get close to 350,000 members, and that's the tip of the iceberg, frankly, of people that are actually participating in our sport at a significant level. But one of the responses that I want to tell you is that we want you, all of you, to be involved in the governance of your region. And there needs to be a way for you to access that. And that's really sort of the fundamental first step of a well-operating region. The clubs and the coaches and the parents and everybody knows about the governance of the region because it's transparent or it's visible, it's being communicated either on the website or through email or however. And there are opportunities for you to get involved. So we all love to complain, and then, you know, fewer of us really want to get involved and be active. And of course, it depends on that to make change. But I don't know. I mean, I hear that, and I hear it regularly, and certainly not just this region. And I'm not pointing a finger, believe me, at this region. The majority of our regions are fantastic, and the commitment and time and effort they put in is great for very minimal reward. That doesn't mean we want them to be, that we don't want them to be better. We do. We want to get better all the time. So I appreciate it. Yeah.
Doug, I think that, well, I'm going to 2014. 2014, in the World Championship, you made a very important move that was very proactive to contact the Iranian federations, to welcome them and to say, hey, we're friends. You mentioned about Brazil, United States. I think that we have a good competition, but we're friends. But I want to talk about diversity. When we look to the makeup of the women's national team, we'll see that the background, the socioeconomic status, the kids who are African Americans, it does not reflect the makeup of the kids who are doing clubs, for instance. So how can we move forward in order to bring that diversity, that, I don't know, you mentioned opportunity to participate, and I was called accessibility and social justice. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. So how can we grow and move forward in that?
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could snap my finger and make that happen. And just to add one point before I try to answer, because it's hard to answer the question, very difficult. There's really, really good, voluminous data that the more diverse your programs are, the higher level you achieve at, almost across the board. It's almost, I don't know, it's almost at 100% or a one-to-one relationship. It's really a powerful statement. So USA Volleyball, for example, is required by the U.S. Olympic Committee, who is required by the federal government to provide a diversity profile of our sport every year to Congress, which includes our participants, coaches, all levels, governance, board of directors, staff, et cetera, et cetera. And certainly from the perspective of gender balance, we're pretty good. In fact, we're far overweighted on women, for sure, because it's sort of the nature of the way the sports have evolved in this country. So I want to take a little bit of exception on the national team, because not too long ago, our national team had, maybe 7 out of 12 or 8 out of 12 African Americans, our women's team, either at an Olympic Games or World Championship. So pretty good diversity from that perspective. Our men are pitiful, very undiverse population. And yet it reflects the broad participatory, I guess, profile of our sport in this country. We should be investing lots more of our resources in targeted diversity programs. John does a terrific job. We have a couple of other staff people that are focused on this. But I would guess right now that, I don't know, what percentage of our budget, Chris? It's not very much. Yeah, and that's our fault, and we ought to do more to target introducing volleyball, exposing the sport, creating programs specifically for underserved populations, whether it's socioeconomic or particular diversity or ethnicity groups, whatever. And again, I'll start whining. It's pretty challenging to create the program and keep the program viable and ongoing, et cetera, et cetera. We've had some at Native American populations, certainly inner city. The best ongoing one is, some of you probably know about Starlings, and we've invested in that at some level, but we could do a lot more. And one of our challenges is as our budget grows, so we generate more revenue, the demand for those dollars grows faster than the income that's coming in. So it's I don't know, it's just sort of a conundrum, I guess, about that. And part of the reason is that we're not generating as much in a percent fashion from non-committed dollars. So if we generate money from membership, that money ought to go back into supporting membership and supporting the regions. If we generate that money from, to a certain degree, if we generate that money from events, we ought to go into enhancing the events and sort of giving back to the people that are actually providing the resources at some level. You always have to, I don't know, some goes to administration and some goes to other areas, but that's sort of the philosophy. I don't know that it's necessarily the right philosophy, but I couldn't agree more. We've got to do more, and one of the big advantages when we talk about the United States is this incredibly diverse population, and we need to take advantage of it. And there clearly are, so many wonderful potential volleyball players out there in all these different ethnicities and groups, and and it really would only take one or two to be role models, or you can point a finger to this person or that person. So it's his responsibility. It's mine anymore. Okay.
Anything else? All right.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug,
it's nice
for sharing with us, for sure.
Okay.
We're honored.